How has poaching elephants affected their genetic diversity? In what way did people end up creating the hundreds of dog breeds that exist today? Why did the coyote learn to adapt to urban environments? How have people affected the evolution of the horse? In what ways have all of these animals at one time or another been influenced by humans? It took 50 million years, but these giants evolved from a creature the size of a dog. A polarizing animal, it is worshipped, studied, and hunted with fervor. Today, it is the largest land mammal on Earth. The African elephant weighs as much as a dump truck, yet its skin is so sensitive it can feel a fly land on it. The species ranges across South and Central Africa, with a few left in North Africa. A little bigger than their relatives in Asia. One way to tell them apart is their ears. The Asian elephant's ears are smaller, and the African elephant's ears are shaped like the continent of Africa. Their tusks are different too. Both female and male African elephants have tusks, but in the world of the Asian elephant, it is only the males that sport those ivory tusks. These giants are exceptionally intelligent. Their brain weighs in at 11 pounds, making it the largest among living and extinct terrestrial mammals. African elephants can cooperate and even use tools to find food. And they can remember locations of watering holes hundreds of miles apart to return year after year. It stands to reason that a group of elephants is sometimes called a memory. The most distinguishing feature of the elephant is, of course, its trunk. An elephant's trunk is both its upper lip and its nose. It's strong enough to push over a tree, but nimble enough to pick up a piece of hay.
The trunk has about 100,000 muscles in it, and it can be used to suck up water, to interact with their environment, to help rear young. Pretty much anything you can do with a hand and an arm, they can do with their trunk, plus some.
On either side of the trunk are the tusks.
Well, the tusks are just merely an adaptation of their incisor teeth. Just like you and I have incisor teeth, they do too. They don't need front teeth because they don't bite or chew anything off. They just stuff everything in their mouth and grind it up. Typically, elephants only have 8 molars in the back, and those are used for grinding and chewing. But the incisor teeth stayed and adapted into these big tusks because those are used for a number of things, from defense to attracting mates.
The ivory tusks are in demand as trophies and for carving, and can fetch up to $60,000 on the black market.
The biggest threat to them right now is poaching for ivory. Currently, we're losing about almost 100 elephants a day to poaching, so it's a big crisis.
Poaching ivory is a fairly recent phenomenon in evolution, but historically it has been happening for centuries. Some scientists believe it could actually be affecting the evolution of the species. Widespread hunting severely reduced elephant populations in South Africa by 1900, resulting in a series of population bottlenecks. A bottleneck is when an animal's population size is drastically reduced. The result of these bottlenecks was a reduction in the amount of genetic diversity in the surviving elephant populations. Reduced genetic diversity means that populations may not be able to adapt to environmental change. Genetic bottlenecks can even result in some unusual traits arising within isolated populations. In South Africa's Addo Elephant National Park, 98% of females are born without tusks altogether. Some scientists think that because this population is small in size and isolated, they are unable to breed with other groups of elephants. This decreases genetic diversity and might be the reason that most females in this area are born without tusks. Some might argue that tusklessness in populations like these could help these hunted creatures. If elephants are born without tusks, it leaves no tusks for humans to hunt. But in other populations across Africa, where tusks still mark the young and old, poaching continues today. While tusks are a useful adaptation for the elephant, they are the primary reason these animals are being killed. Mankind has tragically affected these intelligent creatures. Their evolution is bound by our influence, leading to a decline in diversity and overall prosperity. Dogs have been man's best friends for quite some time. They comfort and entertain us. Their destiny is inextricably tied to our own. Ancient hunter-gatherers, agriculture, and selective breeding may have all affected the evolution of this species. How has the modern-day dog come about? And how have we shaped the evolution of dogs throughout history? The answer is not as simple as it seems. Dogs and wolves are part of the larger family of canids, a lineage of carnivorans that roamed the planet millions of years ago. The largest prehistoric canid to ever exist was Epicyon, a bone-crushing dog with powerful teeth and jaws. It was a member of the Borophaginae, a subfamily that is now extinct. The largest Epicyon rivaled a brown bear in size and wandered the plains of North America. But prehistoric canids are only the beginning of the story of today's Rex or Fido. To really understand where domestic dogs came from, the relatedness of wolves and dogs must be explored. Popular belief is that dogs are directly descended from wolves. But some scientists think that the modern dog and wolf share a common wolf-like ancestor, distinct from today's modern wolf. Exactly who this ancestor was remains a mystery, but it's suspected that these two lineages split 27,000 to 40,000 years ago. Wolves are dogs' closest living relatives, but it's likely that dogs are more like cousins to wolves than direct descendants.
Dogs have evolved as a species over a relatively long period of time and independent from the lineage that gave rise to modern wolves. There are many breeds of dogs nowadays, and of course they're all the same species, but among all of those different breeds, all of those dogs are more closely related, genetically speaking, to one another than they are to modern wolves.
While dogs and wolves are linked by ancestry, the wolf remains wild, yet dogs live among us. How did this happen? To help string together their story, we must look to humans for clues. Some scientists theorize that there have been three distinct phases during which humans have affected the evolution of dogs. Studies suggest that the ancestors of modern-day dogs were initially tamed as they roamed alongside hunter-gatherers.
It's most likely that humans and dogs started interacting directly with one another around 20 to 30,000 years ago, roaming around over the great distances looking for food, largely to bring down big game. And so quite obviously, dogs could be useful in this purpose, but also would gain out of the relationship in which they would get some of the food that would be taken as well.
But hunters, too, would have had a great advantage. Dogs would have protected them.
Evolutionarily speaking, when humans were roaming around as hunter-gatherers, they would have been subjected to prey by large animals at the time, such as the saber-toothed cats, for example. And dogs would have been very useful as pack animals to protect us from them as well.
Another point of domestication could be connected to the rise of agriculture. With the introduction of plants in our diets, dogs of that era that lived near humans adapted to an agricultural meal plan.
An interesting difference between dogs and wolves is that dogs have evolved an ability to digest starches. This is related to the transition in humans from hunters and gatherers to sedentary agriculturalists. Well, the nature of the scraps would have changed from largely meat-based foods to largely starch-based foods that were the product of those grains of agriculture. And so as a result, the dogs have evolved enzymes that allow them to digest the starches to have access to those nutrients, as well as digestive processes that allow them to assimilate them into their tissues.
One study indicates that dogs carry extra copies of the gene responsible for digesting starch. This gene is 28 times more active in dogs than it is in wolves.
Good girl.
But in more recent history, humans have shaped the evolution of dogs in a much larger way.
If we look among all the breeds of dogs, we recognize that there is a great deal of variability. Now, this morphological variability in the same species of dog is greater than any morphological variability for any other mammal that exists. This tells us that we have played an active part in selecting these breeds to become the way they are by looking for traits that are of interest to us and selecting for those.
From the English Springer Spaniel, to the Scottish Terrier, to the common poodle, humans have designed dogs with long ears, shaggy hair, and scrunched up snouts, amongst other traits. We have often selected for traits that are different from their wolf-like cousins. When did Rex or Fido first sit or roll over on our command? We may never know where or when wild dogs first went for a walk with humans. What we do know is that it was a series of events throughout history that named them man's best friend. The dog has evolved alongside us into the extraordinary and sometimes odd variations we know and love today. Dogs may have moved into people's houses, but coyotes found a different way to get along with humans. They just found a place in the neighborhood. They live among us in backyards and back alleys, yet we hardly know they're there. The modern coyote is thought to have existed for over 1 million years. But what has made this species so successful? And how did this small canid evolve to become top dog in many cities? The answer is rooted in their history.
Well, coyotes evolved in North America along with a sister species, which became the eastern wolf. They had a common ancestor that roamed the ancestral North American continent. And they split off. The coyotes became the hunters of the prairies, and the other wolf became the hunter of the forests.
2 centuries ago, coyotes hunted rabbits, mice, and insects in the grasslands of the Great Plains. But they couldn't compete in the forests with the much larger gray wolves that were quick to push off coyotes that tried to scavenge their kills. At the turn of the 20th century, humans entered the equation. People cleared forests for logging and agriculture, building settlements and opening up large tracts of land. This was bad news for the wolves that called the forest home.
We had to clear the forest, kill off the wolves. Coyotes remained in the prairies and survived a lot of attacks by humans out there.
Having survived this encroachment, coyotes began to take advantage of newly formed habitats created by humans. They also filled the wolf's ecological niche. So while humans had a negative effect on wolf populations, they seem to have inadvertently helped coyotes, and that still continues today.
In terms of our effect on coyotes, it's been more positive than negative, providing more habitat for them because coyotes prefer more open areas with smaller woodlots here and there. And as we fragment the forest more and more, there's more and more coyote habitat available. And also because we have large urban centers now, more sprawl, there's more opportunity for coyotes to exploit that as well. So if anything, our effect on coyotes has been very positive. Wolves, on the other hand, has been the opposite. As we degrade the wilder areas of their habitat, wolves are diminishing in numbers, at least in the southern part of the range.
Coyotes now live among us, in our backyards, our farms, and even in some cities. But what has allowed them to live among humans? They seem to have adapted new habits to help give them an edge in town. Urban coyotes started staying up later, shifting their activity to the nighttime to avoid running into humans. Many coyotes have used city elements, like old pipes, to raise their pups. Most importantly, coyotes have evolved to be able to survive on a range of food sources, like our garbage.
Coyotes seem to have learned that humans offer a source of food. Coyotes are really resourceful, and besides being hunters of small animals, they are also scavengers, and therefore garbage cans and so on offer a source of food for them.
Even when we try to repeat history and kill coyotes like we did wolves in the past, they still manage to survive. Coyotes have an intriguing ability when under pressure to increase their reproduction. Studies have shown that when you remove a dominant coyote from the family unit, both litter and pack sizes double. When under threat, females increase their litter size and reproduce earlier. Champions of change, the coyote has proven to be a resilient species. Exploiting new sources of food, the coyote has managed to survive and populate North America, from Florida to Alaska. Unlike its relative, the wolf, the coyote has proven an adaptable animal, able to survive in a landscape transformed by people. The very first horse was the size of a coyote. But a lot has changed for the horse. And a lot of those changes are because of humans. Horses have been around for millions of years, using their muscular legs for speed and power. Horses and humans share an ancient relationship that has helped humans survive for centuries. But how did modern horses evolve in the first place? And how have humans played a part in this process? The answer begins with the first horse to ever roam the planet. It scampered through forests that covered North America.
Hyracotherium was essentially the first horse. It existed about 50 million years ago and was about the size of a large cat or a small dog.
This small creature was the descendant of ancestral mammals, who were also tiny in size. In the presence of giant dinosaurs, being small was an advantage that helped creatures stay out of sight and avoid getting eaten. But how did a horse the size of a dog evolve into the massive creatures we know today? As continents pulled apart and climate conditions changed, grasslands began to cover great swaths of the continents. New horse species emerged from the forests into the open grasslands, where being tall was advantageous. In this new environment, it was easier to run from predators than hide. So some horses became larger and faster, resembling the modern-day horses we know today. Being out in the open changed the game for a creature that initially lived in the cover of the forest.
They were more susceptible to predation because there were fewer places to hide. So this led to a number of consequences. One being bigger is better in that it's faster and stronger and more capable to outrun predators. But also having a larger body size really helps to protect oneself against predators because you have a greater fighting chance as well.
With speed and size giving them an advantage, horses adapted a series of traits to help keep them alive. Their eyes, placed on either side of their face, give them relatively no depth perception, but an almost 360-degree field of view, essential for detecting approaching predators. Their eyes are also on the top of their heads, allowing for an expansive field of vision while grazing with their heads down. Their legs, long, lean, lightweight, and with powerful muscles, give them an immense stride, allowing them to run incredibly fast. Their noses also adapted for running at high speeds in the open expanses of their new habitat.
We see that there are physiological adaptations as well as morphological ones that allow horses to be able to be these high endurance capacity, long distance runners without really overheating, and one of which is the elongation of that head and the big long nose that they have, because the huge sinus cavity that they have in there is a great place for a circulation of a lot of cool air, which cools down the blood. It'll eventually go to the head and to the brain. Very important not to overheat the brain.
But all these changes took place long before humans laid eyes on a horse. What is especially fascinating about the evolution of the horse is how humans have altered it over recent history.
We well know that horses existed in North America up until about the last ice age, and there's evidence to suggest that it was because of human hunting that they went extinct here. And this is seen to be part of the Pleistocene overkill hypothesis, suggesting that a large number of large animals went extinct principally due to the activities of hunting by humans. There was a long period of time, about 10 to 15,000 years, when horses were extinct from North America. Humans subsequently brought horses back over when European colonizers came back.
Apart from hunting horses, humans have used them throughout history to enhance our way of life. We have used horses as transportation, on the battlefield, and in competitions. Speed, which was initially developed to evade predators, is now used for sport. Today, 50 million years after the first horse evolved, very few are found in the wild. Humans have domesticated them through selective breeding.
Artificial selection is the process in which we actively participate in determining which traits are chosen to be in the next generation.
Humans have created a series of different breeds in hopes of creating faster, bigger, stronger, or sometimes smaller horses. And in doing so have changed the course of evolution for this ancient species. The horse's speed has been the key to its success, both in the wild and among humans. Intertwined with us throughout history, the horse is a beast with tremendous power and a will to survive. The evolution of certain species has been altered throughout the course of human history. From the elephant, to the dog, to the horse, and the coyote. For better or worse, we have influenced these creatures. As we retrace our steps, maybe we can help solve the mysteries of their evolution.